Thank you. Okay, so thank you everyone for being here today. We're very lucky to have two of the more progressive or very progressive universities across Canada, and there have been many of them over the course of the last 2 years. I want to thank them all. So we have the University of Victoria, who will be talking about the calculation of food emissions and progressive change at UVic. We will feature Executive Chef Tony Heasterman, Holly Cecil in Animals and Society Research Initiative, Kylie Hisa, the Sustainability Coordinator. And in addition, we will have the University of Guelph, who will talk about their vision and success with plant-based meals at the University of Guelph. We will feature Executive Chef Vijay Nair and Valerie True, who is the Director of the Childcare and Learning Center. And we will also talk about food emissions, I believe, for the CCLC with Valerie. Let me see. So Tony, as I mentioned, has to leave. So Tony will be the first speaker. If you could put your questions in the chat, we will follow the questions throughout. If you can put 3 stars or 3 asterisks in front of your questions so that we can differentiate the comments from the questions. And then Brian will pose the questions at the end after the 2 universities have finished their presentations. And let me see, I think that was it. Is there anything? Oh, wait, I do want to introduce our technical help today, which is really very appreciated. We have Ina Taneshu and Brian Labatt. So thank you, everyone, and we'll get started. I just have 1 slide to show, and this is to emphasize the difference between the greenhouse gas emissions between animal protein and plant protein. And this is obviously one of the reasons why we're going to talk about food emissions today. So I will stop sharing. And Holly, I believe.
Oh, Eleanor, I think you're muted.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, Holly, sorry, yeah, I was asking Holly if you could start the UVic presentation, please. And Tony will go first.
So I have started it. Are you seeing?
Yeah, I see it. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Thank you very much, Holly. I am the Executive Chef of the University of Victoria and Associate Director. Before I get started, I would like to acknowledge and respect the Lekwungen people whose traditional territory the university stands. Also the Songhees, Esquimalt, and Wasanich people for their historical relationship with the lands that continue to today. I've been very fortunate being part of the building of our 2 new passive house buildings. I was part of the building committee back in 2017. So I had a lot of input in what was going to be in the back of the house and the kitchens and the planning for our restaurants, our kiosks in both the buildings. The Chutney building is our main kitchen that deals with all food across campus, plus what's in our Cove dining. And the Snacka building that is not complete at this time, it will be finished in July, which will have our conferencing space. So our catering is just being a little bit depleted. So at this time, I would like to talk about what we're doing in our menus to reduce our carbon footprint. We basically focus on our vegetarian option, vegan options in our menus. So anything on our menus starts off with our vegan vegetarian options. We've reduced our beef items in our menus by substituting with pork, chicken, fish, and other plant-based proteins. We have also eliminated all lamb from our catering, our retail, and our meeting spaces in our restaurants. Could I get the second slide, please? So we've also eliminated our beef chili across campus. We have a vegan chili that is a very nice chili that everybody quite enjoys. So we basically eliminated that. That was not, we did not have a lot of problems with doing that. And in this picture, you'll see me holding our 50-50 burger that is 50% beef, halal beef, and 50% pea protein. It is an extremely good burger. You really wouldn't be able to tell the taste of it that it has that much substitution of beef out of it. Can I get the next slide, please? We also default our gravy to a plant-based gravy. So across campus, we only use a plant-based gravy. We also use default to a vegan cheese. The cheese that we use right now is Dea. So at the grills, you would find you would automatically get a vegan cheese unless you ask for our regular cheddar or our smoked cheddar that we would have available. The other thing we've defaulted to is our vegan mayonnaise. We buy the Hellmann's vegan mayonnaise. It's quite a bit more expensive, but it is a good quality. It's not as runny as some of the other vegan mayonnaise. You can make your own vegan mayonnaise by using the aquafaba, but with the amount of volume that we go through, we just wouldn't be able to keep up with the aquafaba that we get out of our chickpeas. The other thing that we incorporated last year was our meatless Mondays. Not saying that there's no meat available for any of our students, but we would have in all our kiosks no animal-based proteins just for that day. The other thing that is a big focus is our greens kiosk. As soon as you walk into our Cove dining, is our greens kiosk, which is 100% vegan. Most of the products are made in-house. Can I get the next slide, please? So these are some of the menus that we have up here. The greens is there. We have a 3-week rotating menu, and then we have a 1-week rotating a la carte menu on top of that. Next slide, please. The shawarma has a lot of plant-based options. We're about 60% plant-based in there. The only thing that we serve in there is a halal chicken. We do a shawarma, portobello mushroom, and the falafels. So out of all of our kiosks, that's one of the kiosks that has more plant-based than the other ones. In our stir fry station, once again, all our sauces are created from scratch for the stir fry. Can I get the next slide, please? I think that was the last one, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's the last
Okay.
one.
So the other thing that we've been focusing on is reducing our packaging and waste on campus. Here on our campus, we have a 48% diversion rate of all our waste. In our kitchens, we have a 3-pail system, whether you're in the main kitchen working or you're in one of the kiosks, and it would be consistent of garbage, compostable, and recyclable. And all those pails would be taken over to our dishwashing area and put in the correct bins. The other thing that we do is we do a tray sorting in the dishwashing area. So when you walk into the Cove dining, there is absolutely not one single garbage can anywhere in the building. If you bring stuff into the building, you'll still be able just to put it on to our scrapping trays, and we take it into our kitchen and break it down to the correct bins for disposal. The other thing that we've done is we've charged for takeout containers and coffee cups. Both our takeout containers and coffee cups are 100% compostable, but we do try and discourage our students from taking the takeout containers. The other thing that we've done is we've created an eco container. So this is a plastic container that's reusable. Our first year students came on board and they all got a free container to kind of promote these eco containers, which has actually done quite well for us. So the student would be basically buy the dish that they'd like, get it taken in the eco container, take it to their class, take it to their room, wherever they want, and then they'd bring back the container at the end, and then they'd get another card to purchase the next eco container, and we would clean it in our kitchen. The other thing that we use is compostable straws and compostable cutlery for all of our catering and all of our outlets. We're also in the process of sourcing out a single-use compostable containers. We're fairly close on that. It's I think probably by the startup of September we should probably be there. The other thing that we do is we do not sell bottled water in any of our food services areas other than the retail areas. So if you go into the Cove Dining or the Mystic Market, you would not be able to purchase bottled water. So the other thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to work with more with purchasing local. We're at about 34% local products that we purchase. We also partnered with Feed BC, and all our suppliers are actually on our website, so that you can see the suppliers that we are using here on the island. One of our biggest challenges here was our Meatless Monday. Unfortunately, by the end of our school season, we had so many complaints from our students that we stopped we postponed our Meatless Monday. The old saying goes, is the loudest, the smallest group or the loudest voice here in the university. And we basically had so many complaints that we decided that it's better for us at this point just to park it and see what we would do the following year. That's all I have for my presentation.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony. Thank you for that. Very good. So Holly, we'll move to you now.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. You and your team have done such great work implementing all the climate-friendly menu changes here at UVic. It's just really commend you and your team for all that you've done. So I'm Holly Sissel, and I'm going to speak on our 2021 project calculating food emissions at the University of Victoria. Just briefly on how I came to be part of this team. My background since 1992 has been working for NGOs and researching food systems and sustainability. That was both living in the UK and in Canada. Back then, climate change was emerging as only one of many environmental harms caused by industrial agriculture, including air and waterways pollution, land degradation and biodiversity loss, all of the issues that have been covered on past events in this series so well. I've been at the University of Victoria since 2011. I work in the Faculty of Law in the Animals and Society Research Initiative. So here at UVic on beautiful Vancouver Island, our student population is approximately 20,000 with a diverse student base and about 20% international students. A range of food outlets on campus serve the students, faculty, and staff, including our new carbon neutral residence and dining facility, the Cove, with one of the largest passive house kitchens in North America. It's really beautiful to see. Food emissions on campus had never been calculated before, and UVic's strong commitment to greenhouse gas reductions made this an important project. And I'll just briefly describe here where food fits in with the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions reporting protocols, because it's an important leverage point for universities pledging carbon reductions or fully net zero. So UVic, like other organizations, reports to government our scope 1 and 2 emissions, which are those directly attributed to operations. So you can see in the center of this graphic, scope 1 is direct emissions from stationary energies such as buildings and fossil fuel heating and fleet transportation. Scope 2 on the left are indirect emissions via electricity, and scope 3 are those considered upstream or downstream emissions. And in this case, food falls under our scope 3 reporting, along with other indirect activities like employee and faculty travel, those sorts of things. So more organizations are now calculating and reporting their scope 3 emissions and pursuing reductions. So in 2021, we launched the Default Veg at UVic initiative to analyze and address the greenhouse gas impacts from food outlets across campus. We worked with the great team in campus planning and sustainability, and our report was published at the end of 2021, which concluded our part of the project. This is a screenshot of our website where we've posted our report along with a broader summary of university food initiatives across Canada and internationally. Also a media gallery of past university presentations. Valerie, who'll be presenting later today, there's a video of Valerie's there. So we've also included links to a range of useful resources, such as all the major research papers on food and climate change. So I encourage you to check those out and also contribute any news or resources from your own university, because the more we can help each other, everyone shares in those successes. Our team included registered dietitian and UVic instructor Nicole Federley, who's shown here on the video, and also Deanne Talio, who are both really terrific. Also, thanks to the Default Veg and Greener by Default initiatives, including Alana Braverman. They supported with educational and promotional materials. And UVic Food Services also partners with Forward Food, who've provided invaluable university chefs training, which the UVic chefs attended back in 2017, I believe. For the calculations, we are indebted to the World Resources Institute, Cool Food Movement, and their Cool Food Calculator, and their link is shown on the left there. Their protein scorecard is just a snapshot of relative emissions among protein categories, with animal protein shown in yellow and red, and particularly ruminant meats being the most emissions intensive, versus the lower emissions categories in green. Those are primarily plant-based. The Cool Food Calculator itself embeds, it's an exhaustive range of emissions metrics by food type and region, and that's all based on the 2019 Poor and Nemechek Oxford study, which was the largest global study to date. And that allowed us to base our calculations on food categories purchased in this region, but that's a global database. And this, incidentally, is their growing list of universities, cities, and organizations committed to the Cool Food Pledge, including Aramark, which I know a lot of our Canadian universities use. So turning to our report, it's available both on our website and the Office of Sustainability. We calculated annual emissions from food on campus in 2019, and we selected that as the most recent pre-COVID year for full attendance on campus. And the results totaled 3,258 tons CO2 equivalent from food. So just briefly, that graph on the right compares with the scope 1 and 2 emissions at UVic for the same year. And we're at about a third of our scope 1 emissions. So it's quite significant. So this provides our baseline for UVic going forward to measure food emission reductions already being implemented since that time. So what's interesting to note about the calculator is that it provides two outputs for food emissions. The standard input reporting here includes emissions due to land use change. It excludes land use change, and the if we add that, it's significantly different. So the difference is relative to carbon factoring. So since 1750, land use change has caused about a third of all anthropogenic carbon emissions due to deforestation and other land use changes. And agriculture is a primary area for land use change. So that's what makes this so significant for our food emissions. When carbon opportunity costs are factored, that second table shows our food emissions more than quadruple at around 15,000 tons CO2 equivalent. The calculator also provides us with further evidence of what type of menu shifts will reduce our emissions the most. So over 2019, you've purchased around 1 million kilograms of food. The pie chart shows how this breaks down by weight on the left, with ruminant meat showing in red at 3% and dairy at 22%, for example. Animal products in total comprised about 40% of purchases compared to 60% by weight for plant-based foods. And note on the left that the red tier ruminant meats comprise only 3% of food purchases by weight. But if you look to the right, they result in 34% of all our emissions from food. Combined with dairy, they represent almost 60% of campus emissions from food. So these are very significant. Overall, emissions from green tier plant-based foods at UVic accounted for only 18% of emissions, while animal-based foods dominated with 82%. So obviously those red and yellow tier foods represent the categories in which we're going to achieve the greatest emissions reductions. This from the UVic Food Services website shows the many recommendations Tony described that he and his team have implemented in the past year. We've also recommended a broader education campaign to the campus community. As Tony mentioned, there's been some pushback. So continuing to educate on the significant impact of student choices. We've done some education campaigns such as what you're looking at here that showed shifting to our plant-based chili compared to the beef chili on the right. That had 25 times the climate impact. So bringing in these menu shifts will really make a difference if we can get all the students in the campus community on board. We've also run campus events such as menu sampling and tasting events. That's the sustainability team on the left, and on the right, Chef Tony and our dietitian, Nicole Federley. So for now, I'll just really commend everyone involved in the project and turn it over to Kylie Hissa, Acting Manager in Sustainability at UVic.
Amazing, thank you, Holly. I'm just gonna try sharing my screen here, and hopefully you all can see. I've got a second monitor going, so it should be full screen. Everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Wonderful. So to briefly introduce myself again, my name is Kylie Hissa. I work in the Office of Campus Planning and Sustainability here at UVic. I joined the university about 1.5 years ago at the end of 2021 as a sustainability coordinator, and now acting manager of sustainability. And our office is quite small as well. We operate out of the Vice President Office of Finance and Operations, and the Campus Planning and Sustainability office here. There's typically 5, and over the last year, which I'm sure a lot of other universities can empathize with, we've been down to about 3 people. And so building back up some of that capacity. And what our office does, we're involved with overseeing some of the broader capital planning projects, implementation of the campus plan and cycling plan, but on the sustainability side, reporting out on GHG emissions, which includes data collection reporting, as well as the ASHI STARS reporting framework, implementing engagement campaigns, and then working with different departments across campus, like food services, waste reduction, to meet targets and help, again, with our reporting and our GHG reduction targets. So today I'm going to just speak to UVic's Climate and Sustainability Action Plan, which was released in end of October, November of 2022. So it's quite new, and it goes to 2030, as well as the Race to Zero pledge, and how UVic is committing to reducing Scope 3 emissions, with menu shifts having a key role with that. So to quickly touch on the Race to Zero pledge, many of you may have already heard of the pledge and universities make that pledge themselves. It's a UNCC global campaign to rally international leadership and support from businesses, cities, regions, investors, and universities to reach zero carbon recovery that prevents future threats and unlocks inclusive, sustainable growth. And one of the criteria of Race to Zero is having targets that cover all GHG emissions, scopes 1, 2, and 3. And that means that at the head of an organization level, having the target to reach net zero by 2050 at the latest. Our current position on GHG reduction, so this diagram here was included in the Climate Sustainability Action Plan, and it was put together by our energy management team. And I do want to disclose here that this graph is specific to the Gordon Head campus itself. UVic under BC's, or the province of BC's carbon neutral government program were legislated under the Climate Change Accountability Act to follow a regulated process that measures, reduces, offsets, and then we report and verify our emissions. So the university follows these processes and has been net zero since 2010, or sorry, carbon neutral since 2010. And under the carbon neutral government program, the university currently tracks scopes 1, 2, limited scope 3 emissions for office paper, as well as some of the external properties could be considered downstream leased, so also kind of within the scope 3 category. Between 2019 and 2021, throughout the COVID pandemic, as many other universities, I'm sure, there were some significant reductions in CO2 emissions, which we're starting to see kind of increase again now that campus operations is relatively back to normal. Some of the targets in the Climate Sustainability Action Plan for GHG emissions is by 2030 to reduce campus operations by 50% below the baseline, by 2040 achieve net zero emissions for campus operations, and then by 2050 achieve a climate positive campus. And so with the Race to Zero pledge, that 50% reduction target by 2050, ours is 2030. So we're really trying to accelerate the progress in reaching those targets. And with the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan, previously the plans that the university has reported through have been quite operational in nature, so kind of focused within the VPFO office for general operations. Whereas the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan is the first plan for the university that really intends to bridge all of the different portfolios together on collaborative efforts to reduce GHG emissions, to improve sustainability, achieve kind of targets that align with the Times Higher Education SDG framework, and bridge together the research into operations with Indigenous, with finance, which is still quite a novel approach that the university has adopted, and kind of building those relationships and connections across campus. This slide here, I've just outlined some of the actions that we have in the Climate and Sustainability Action Plan that specifically relate to reducing our food-related GHG emissions on campus. So you'll see that there's the target by 2030 to reduce food-related emissions by 50% from the 2019 baseline, which is the project that Holly and her team had worked on, looking at making plant-based foods the default for 60% of campus menus, also looking at purchasing practices to decrease the amount of meat and dairy products that we're purchasing, increasing local suppliers, all of the things that Tony and his team are actively working on. And a big focus here too is the education and awareness piece, which is instrumental. Specifically to scope 3 reporting framework. So this is still a work in progress for the university. Again, right now, the focus has been fulfilling our mandated reporting requirements to the province, under that legislated program. And in doing so, right now we're in a process of reviewing current practices and procedures to make improvements, looking at digitization, how can we integrate kind of some of the data collection to make it more seamless with existing online expense management software. And then again, looking at how we can align those improvements with a proposed scope 3 methodology with existing procedures. So trying to make the relationship between what Holly and her team had worked on to create that baseline, and then how can we actually integrate that with existing software and systems on campus. I also do want to touch on some of the challenges that I'm sure a lot of other institutions, not just universities, kind of experience, especially now coming out of the global pandemic. But we're looking at seeking additional resourcing to manage our GHG inventory and associated procedures. And then after that, we're kind of an important next step will be completing an internal review of what we have collected for scope 3, and then formalizing a framework and methodology that can be replicated over time. And this last slide here, again, is highlighting just several of the many challenges that all organizations experience: resourcing, capacity, staff turnover, equity, thinking about as we develop a methodology and a framework, making sure that we have that equity lens applied to it. And I think right now, especially with cost of living increasing and inflation, that's going to have a big impact on purchasing in general. So making sure that we're being cognizant of some of those equity challenges. Some other notable ones here is, again, inflation, supply chain, and then a lack of standardized methodology. So because there isn't a standard methodology that universities can adopt, there's going to be some changes and nuances across all kinds of higher education institutions. And so having that guidance, and there's been some initial meetings, at least in BC, with some of our other education partners to try to group together and kind of information share to learn kind of what is working, what's not working, what some of those challenges are, and if a standardized methodology, if that comes and is led by universities themselves or by upper levels of government, I think that is a really important piece to the puzzle. And that concludes my presentation. So maybe I'll pass it back to you, Eleanor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Uvik. Very impressive, the amount of work that went into this from all departments. So congratulations. Really appreciate all the work and the results that came about from that intensive work. Okay, we're going to move to the University of Guelph. I'm sorry we ran into your time, but we're going to try to complete everything. So yeah, please, let's go ahead. Thank you again, Uvik, and Tony, if you have to leave, my congratulations to you for all the impressive work you and your teams have done.
Hey.
Yeah.
Am I going, Valerie?
Yeah, go ahead, Vijay.
Yeah.
You're up first.
Yeah, are you gonna? I'm just thinking as a specific. Can it be a full screen on slide by slide? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Vijay. I'm one of the chefs here at Guelph. I'm fortunate to be part of a good team. Again, thanks, Eleanor, for having us again here. And we are here to share some of our success and really learn from the rest of the group. I'm sure lots of you are doing a lot of great work. Great to see what Uvik has done. We have lots of stories to talk about our food, but I have to admit we are embarrassingly behind in data collection and some of the other administrative work. So we are taking steps on those things. Next slide. Yeah, so for motivation, just like many of you in the room, it's very simple. We all know that the current way of protein production is just not sustainable, and we give it fair thought, and everybody in our group agrees to that, and then we kind of decided to do a lot of these changes a few years ago. In the last few years, especially after the pandemic, we stepped on the gas quite a bit more. But these really were some of our motivational factors, like a lot of you in the group. So it's very general, very simple. Unlike the West Coast, I think there are 5 schools here. We are kind of very similar in operation. Waterloo, University of Waterloo, Western, McMaster, Toronto, and us. We are pretty much in the same level of operations, if you may. EFT is slightly bigger in terms of the overall number of students, but otherwise, we all have about 4,000 to 5,000 students and residents, 12 to 15,000 meals a day, anywhere from 45 to 50,000 transactions. On an average, we are in the school year, we are about 2.5 million meals. So combined, the 5 schools, we're just over 10 million meals a year. And that's the way we look at it. Any small changes really contribute to, in a big picture, it's a sizable contribution that we can make. And that is why I think a lot of us have a very similar approach and to make some changes in the menus as to what we offer. Next slide. Yeah, so what have we done? Really for us at Guelph, food's been number 1 on our list, really to improve our menus and really build on our history of doing good food, great food cooked in-house. Lots of things that we've done is primarily to focus on food, do very good food, let food do the talking, and really students and our community if they have a great salad or they have a great entree, great plant-based entree, they might go for that rather than go for meat. That really has been our way of trying to promote food on campus. We have definitely made a lot of changes in terms of how we do our menus, taken away a lot of our red meat, instead substituted with a lot of very healthy cooked in-house, and that's been our mantra in a way. So what have we done? Menus, we have a tagline called International Flavors, Local Ingredients. It is beyond doubt that a lot of ethnic vegetarian food has a lot more appeal. We have a very multicultural group. So a lot of our cooks have a lot of freedom to try different recipes from where they are from, and we give them a lot of freedom. So all that filters into the menu and the options that we have on campus. So we've had some good, decent success. But again, we've just barely scratched the surface, right? So next slide. This is kind of a snapshot. We have an organic farm on campus. It's actually a working organic farm. We are lucky to get a lot of produce back into our kitchens from there. One of the most important things I think we do is really make it a highlight reel, if you may, just to make the organic farm and vegetables it's more sexy. So we get a lot of our chefs and the student advisory committee students. The first meeting is usually at the organic farm, right next to the compost pile, with the farmer, and we try to take them on a good tour and really give our group a good idea of what it is and really promote this and really to make vegetables more attractive. I don't think we can beat nature's color. So this is some of the plates that we do out of Nourish and Nourish. So Nourish and Nourish is a plant-based shop or an outlet that we've opened since our renovation 2021 in one of our locations. We have 3 big locations for residence dining. It's all plant-based, lots of good color, lots of different food. As an example, in the photographs that you see, we've started taking photographs of daily food just to build up on our social media. And again, there's lots of ethnic food on campus, and I think we are kind of focused on doing a very good mix of plant-based stuff. So this is a good example. Last year, fall, September 22, we're just doing about 2-inch pans of food, and by the end of March, April, we are up to about 18 pans of food. So that's a good indicator that, hey, people really like it, and there's going to be substantial demand for it. We didn't do anything much. Food was great, so I think people have started taking those up, have moved to plant-based choices.
Actually, that increase is mostly accounted for by me, VJ. I mentioned that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Next slide. This is kind of a brief snapshot on the menu. Like I said, our menus are very open. We give a lot of freedom to our cooks and chefs. We do write this down, but then depending on who's in the shop, there is a lot of running around behind the scenes. They want to do this and they want to do that. So we have over 75 different suppliers. We buy it from the local markets to the big guys from Cisco, GFS. There are chefs who go out and see some stuff in the market and say they buy, get stuff in, and then we tweak things on the fly. Our in the last 6-7 years, we have made our cooks be open, very open, really, to be adaptable and really think that, hey, this is for the right cause. And that's really has been our mantra, is to get our cooks excited and train them to be adaptable and to do whatever comes their way. And again, we have to say thanks to Rihanna and Michaela. I see them on the list. We had a good workshop for 2 days, and we recently had another one. We had our cooks go to Western when they had the workshop. It really opened their eyes, and I think that's helped. So a lot of our cooks have bought into it, and that I find is very key. So this is 1 week's menu. So we do a lot of. We have we constantly change our menus very, very regularly. So if anybody's interested in our menus, I'm more than happy to share. Next slide. This really, kind of sums up of what we want to do, really educate a group and really care, get our teams really excited about why plant-based is important, why we have to do all that we can to do the right thing. Greenhouse gas emissions and some of the recipe consolidation, these are works in progress, and hopefully we aim to get all that done in the next couple of years. We are actually in the process of doing recipe consolidation. We have just in terms of the regular menus that we offer, we have well over 600 things to consolidate and get the recipes done. It's a lot of work. We don't have the administrative staff. Much of our labor is involved in operations and actual cooking. So we are trying to get into that. So next slide. Yeah, challenges again, like everybody else, and lots of things in different campuses. One of the key things we find is food literacy, and that is very key. And I'm sure Valerie will address to that. We are also an agricultural university. There's a huge amount of research dollars that go into animal research and all that, because we have bovine research and you name it, everything under the sun. So we also have to be conscious about what we talk on campus and do the right thing and really leave it. Now, instead of dictating our schooling peoples, we would rather have them make the choice. So next slide. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we have barely done touch the surface. We are trying to learn as much from others as to what some of the successful campuses have done, and hopefully make more progress in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I know time is tight. I'm going to try to motor through this. And I'm just going to say that I'm Valerie True. I'm the director of the University of Guelph Child Care and Learning Center. And I'm sorry, once I switch, I have to go back. Okay, so this is a lot of information on one slide. But what it is actually a poster presentation that I recently did for the International Association of Lab Schools. It explains, the case for plant-based in general, being health, planet, and ethics. And the fact that we already know that in terms of health, that animal products contribute the most to the non-communicable chronic diseases that we face. We also know that they are a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, but they are the main contributor to the loss of biodiversity, to deforestation, to the acidification of our oceans, water use, land use, and then there's the ethical considerations as well. And then I go on to the case for a plant-based menu in childcare, the fact that most children are in some form of childcare, that dietary habits are formed in childhood, and that those habits affect their lifelong health. That while children are in childcare, they're served 1 meal and 2 snacks daily. And then there's the operational reasons. So there's the efficiency, the safety, the inclusion, the nutrition, and the cost. We know that it's more efficient because we are making fewer tailored meals by reducing or eliminating, in our case, animal products. We know that it's safer because we are eliminating a number of key allergens, as well as reducing the risk of foodborne illness. The health department loves coming to visit us because we've made their job so easy. And then it's more inclusive, of course, because anaphylactic children who are perhaps anaphylactic to dairy or eggs, they can sit and eat, enjoy their food with their milk drinking peers. We did a cost analysis, we did a nutritional analysis, and we did a food sustainability study as well. So I will share that information with you. And then, of course, in terms of childcare, it is one of the ways that we care for children is by caring for their health and the planet. And then, of course, we're a university, we're a lab school. And so anything we do should be research-based. And here it is. We know that this is what we should be doing. And therefore, what excuse do we have to not do that? Also evidence-informed. That's why we do this analysis of the cost, of the safety or the nutrition, and the sustainability. And then as lab schools, we should be leading the way and educating not only children, but future early childhood educators and administrators to be doing what's best for children. And we're very fortunate in Canada that we have one of the most science-based food guides in the world. I was really fortunate to attend a meeting with the director of the health promotion of Health Canada and one of the people who was behind the food guide. And he explained that this food guide is what you get when you remove lobbying and the influence of industry to the process of developing dietary guidelines. He explained that all of the research used in the development of the 2019 food guide was vetted to ensure that it was not produced or funded by any specific industry. And it's really important to understand that that's not always how it's been done in the past, and it's not always how it's done in other places. The development of previous food guides and in dietary guidelines around the world are often use research conducted by specific industries, but are also often financed by industry groups. And so when we raised the issue or the idea of moving to a plant-based menu with our public health dietitians, unfortunately, public health dietitians were still operating based on and approving childcare menus based on the previous food guide, so based on food groups. And so we proposed to our public health dietitian that we would undertake a comprehensive nutritional analysis of a plant-based menu to meet specific nutrient requirements rather than food group requirements. And this process would provide a far more meaningful breakdown of the actual nutrient density of the food being fed to children at a level that you can't achieve just through food groups alone. So public health did agree, and then we moved forward with our nutritional analysis with the help of a very lovely nutrition practicum student. And how we did this is that there's legislation in Ontario and in every province that states basically what children must be provided in a day of care. And so children in attendance for more than 6 hours need to be provided with 1 meal and 2 snacks daily. However, provincially, we're told that this must provide them with 50% of their nutrients. So it might be different in other provinces, but in Ontario, we have to provide 50% of a child's dietary nutrients in the day of care. So that was really the starting point of our nutritional analysis. This is an example of a 4-week plant-based menu, and this is actually the menu that the nutritional analysis was based on. So we try to ensure that our menu reflects the diversity of our community. We encourage students, staff, families to send in recipes, to share their cultural traditions, and then we simply modify those recipes to make them plant-based where necessary. Oftentimes they already are or very close. And then beyond that, of course, we're considering things like nutritional density and flavor and appeal when we're designing a menu. When starting out developing a plant-based menu, we started with the most popular dishes that we already had, and then we just made them plant-based. And that was a very simple conversion. During the menu development process, we aimed to include a variety of different protein sources throughout the week, such as different beans and legumes, some soy protein sources such as tofu and tempeh. We made sure that these protein sources are served in different ways. For instance, in one week, we might offer a plant-based burger, a stew, a pasta dish, a wrap, and a curry. Also, plant-based protein sources are often incorporated into meals in creative ways, such as blending lentils into pasta sauces or pizza sauces and things like that. So when we embarked on the nutritional analysis, these are what we determined with the support of our public health dietitian. These are the nutrients that we were looking for, the macro micronutrients. So we were looking for calories, fat, carbohydrates. They call them nutrients of concern. So it's calories, fat, carbohydrates, protein, vitamin A, niacin, thiamine, riboflavin, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, vitamin C, vitamin D, calcium, iron, zinc, and iodine. And these are micro and macronutrients that children need in their developmental stage, but they're also, you'll see, include the nutrients that are often thought to be difficult to obtain on a plant-based diet. And so based on the 50% of what children need every day, and these, then we embarked on our analysis. And so this is an example of the nutritional analysis, and it's awful, so I'm just going to quickly break it down for you. This is just one day of the week. So in the top row, you can see what was measured. So that's the quantity and weight measurement of the food, the macronutrients, micronutrients that were analyzed. And then at the bottom, you can assess the totals of each nutrient for this day and compare this to the DRI goal of 50%. So in red, we can see what the actual percent of the DRI goal that was reached. And so you can see that in percentages, we greatly exceed the required amount, right? We're 143%, 303%, 177% of the DRI values. And that includes, so I'm going to use protein as an example. So if our goal for each day in protein is 7.5 grams, that means this day alone, this day's intake is already 3 times the required intake. So the whole where do you get your protein doesn't really fly. And then this is the main nutritional analysis. So this doesn't break down each recipe. This actually shows the nutrient density for every day of our 4-week menu. And so you'll see across the top in red is the goal amount, and below shows the actual amount for each day of the menu. And I want to point out that we did take into consideration absorption. So for instance, due to lower absorption of non-heme or plant-based iron, it's recommended that you consume about twice as much of the RDI. And in addition, we have maximized the absorption of various nutrients through food combining, such as ensuring there's a source of vitamin C with foods like spinach or kale to maximize that iron absorption. Vitamin D, I want to point out, is the only nutrient that did not reach 50% of the DRI on our first pass, our first draft of the menu. And that's because we were trying to follow the food guide strictly and only offer water as a beverage. And so that was due to a lack of a prominent source of vitamin D on the menu, because milk and dairy products in Canada are fortified with vitamin D. The first draft of the menu didn't include that, and so we weren't reaching our vitamin D intake requirements. It's still actually quite hard to reach that vitamin D intake. We do use a fortified plant-based milk now, and we're meeting it, but not exceeding it. However, most parents are supplementing their children's vitamin D. We're all told in Canada to supplement vitamin D, especially for children. So that's a consideration. And I think what it identified for us was that it's a fortification issue or fortification practices. So I would like to see some movement in how we fortify and what we fortify in Canada with vitamin D, because if we're only fortifying beverages, then we have to serve children beverages, but we're trying to get away from serving children beverages. So I'd love to see us fortifying grains and breads and cereals and things like that. And then in addition to a nutritional analysis, we also wanted to measure our ecological impact. So we worked with an organization in the UK to complete a food sustainability report comparing our plant-based menu with our previous menu using a global database of food impacts based on the geographic location. And this is what we found based on the Canadian averages. So you can see on the left in the breakdown of foods that the carbon emissions from our new menu don't even come close to the carbon emissions from the dairy, eggs, and meat alone, or even just the meat alone on our old menu. And then on the right, you can see the impact based on practices. And I think this was an interesting learning for us as well. So regardless of the diet, whether plant-based or animal-based, what we really learned is that the ecological impact of the food is coming from the farming practices, which includes the farm and the feed. And so in a plant-based menu, you would eliminate the feed, obviously. So you can see with the old menu, the farm and the feed and the land use accounted for about 70% of the carbon emissions. And then on the plant-based menu, the farming practices, because there is no feed, makes up about 50% of the total emissions. But the best news of all of that was that the plant-based menu reduced our total emissions by 65%, which was much more than we anticipated. And so we've learned things about even other things that we're serving children. We've learned that tomatoes are really intensive in terms of their emissions as well, because they're often greenhouse grown. So we've learned a lot. We also learned that transportation accounts for a minuscule amount of the emissions from food. So I thought that was very interesting. And there's an organization called Drawdown Dietetics that has identified that. And I would love you to connect with them as well, or to check out the work that they're doing. Let's see. And then what that translates to for us, that 65% reduction, is about 66 return flights from Toronto to New York, 30 car trips from Toronto to Vancouver, or heating 8 homes for a year. So just to make it kind of meaningful, especially for children, we like to provide that kind of breakdown. And then finally, what we did not expect was that this would reduce our costs. So we had committed to a plant-based menu for all of those other operational reasons, safety, inclusion, nutrition, sustainability. And then we thought that would come at a bit of a cost or a bit of a premium, but we were committed to it anyway. And what we found when we compared our September to December 2019 to September to December 2020, so we took the same quarter, which I think is really important because we're looking at the same kind of like season, is that we experienced a 9.5% savings from 2019 to 2020. And we all know that there were significant cost increases in that year. And so it did not account for that. So it's likely much higher than that because it didn't account for the rising food costs, and it did not account for the large initial purchase that we had to make of like plant-based staples and dry goods that we needed in our cupboards. And that's it. Whew.
Wow.
Yeah.
Everyone, I think, is amazed. We have fantastic comments in the chat.
Okay, sorry, I was really trying to get it in, and I'm sorry I didn't make it by 5.
Yeah, no, they're absolutely great. I think one of the important questions is, can we get a copy of these presentations to share so that we can, use this information to share with others? I think it's just amazing. Both universities really tremendous amount of work, and it's a ton of work, I mean, that goes into this. So it's, we're also proud of you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So do we, I know we're running a bit late, and I know we had a lot of questions in the chat. Brian, do you, or maybe
there were, if I was to categorize the questions, number one is quite clearly these presentations are all outstanding and people wanted copies of it. Then there's, if I can switch to another interesting question, which is posed by Maddie, which is how would I approach a chef who isn't doing these practices, and what would be kind of a paraphrasing the approach that she should take in trying to talk to somebody who isn't on this path? So I guess we'll open it up to the two universities to provide Maddie with some advice.
Do I go or?
And maybe just so we could see everyone, could we, that's it, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, partly I would think, it depends on where the chef is, is it somebody who's making decisions for the entire university in terms of the menu, entire operation in terms of the menu and a lot of the critical decisions, or is it somebody who follows, for us, it's a chef or a cook who just does cooking and who's in a particular section. I think the person who heads the operation has to have a very clear answer for that. I think, if the university has a set, I mean, as much as the university should have a policy or a vision, I think in this day and age, I think it's crystal clear. If someone has to be informed, then we should take the steps to inform who it is, and and then that is why I said it. If it's in a person who takes in a position who is taking a decision, I think he needs to be informed better or schooled better, if you may.
And I can even expand on that a little bit, and without knowing kind of the context or the exact role of the person that had posed the question, I think it, to kind of expand, it's really important to link it back to strategic plans, or if there is a climate sustainability action plan, anything that you can link back to overall broader organizational vision and targets. I would also recommend looking into whether or not, if it's a university, if there's like a sustainability projects fund or campus as a living lab opportunity, where through that you could explore piloting a mini initiative to get buy-in. And usually through that process, you have to get stakeholder buy-in from the departments and areas that would be affected by whatever project. So having those initial conversations and doing a little bit of scoping to see who those key contacts are, and if there's any champions in the organization or faculty members that can help lead those efforts forward. And maybe Holly, you can expand on that too, because I believe through the Default Veg project that was kind of spearheaded through the Climate Solutions Navigator program, and then also the university has a campus sustainability fund as well. So Holly, I'll just leave it if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Kylie. You covered pretty much everything. Yeah, just to reiterate what you said, every university is going to be different. So just definitely, connect with people that are making those sustainability decisions on campus, student groups. And Eleanor, I don't know if you want to mention anything about the Plant-Based You campaign, or Lindsay that's assisting, if it's going to be student driven, that there's assistance there as well. So, and we're trying to make some of those resources available on the website. There might be others where people can find out how to make those connections and get the support that they need.
Sorry,
Um,
this is Brian. So sorry. This is actually.
Yeah,
I don't know
Howard,
what
you
said.
want
Are
to
you
jump
okay if
in
I
here?
unmute?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. This is actually a question about a case where there has been the beginning of a plant-based U initiative, and it's running into some obstacles. And I think in particular, it was the chef, and they were afraid of student backlash. Maddie, would you want to just maybe unmute and give a little more context? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, I just didn't want to interrupt anyone. But yeah, it's mainly just about like trying to see what are some of the steps that you might find most useful for chefs that might be, or people in positions of power that have been contacted who are reluctant to take on more plant forward types of foods. Even default veg is not an option, I think, purely because there's a lack of evidence under their in their opinion, and also maybe like a fear of certain contracts they might be involved with, you know, changing those types of things. I think they're very hesitant to do so without more evidence, but they're also not interested in trying anything to get evidence. So there's not like case studies that we can really do. So it just kind of feels a little standstill.
Oh, and then sorry, one other thing. It wasn't part of it that they're worried about student backlash. Wasn't that one of the important things they said?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I mentioned that. Evidence in the sense of like, they don't see the students' interest in it, and they would want evidence to see such things, because things in the past have, like Meatless Mondays and stuff like that, have kind of tainted the view of students in their like ability to, I don't know, be on board with this thing.
I think one of the strategies to maybe help resolve that, or to kind of spearhead that change, is rather than looking at the direct next step as, okay, let's, you know, implement something and test it, trial it, maybe another approach is to focus on the communications and the engagement. And maybe that means you're going to pilot an awareness campaign, and you loop in, again, different partners from the university. At the University of Victoria, we have our broader university communications and marketing team to act as a resource to develop kind of a strategy. And I think because the topic of food is so incredibly nuanced, framing that campaign and have different target audiences, and you know, make sure that it's evidence-based. But if you are implementing or rolling out an awareness campaign, maybe one theme is the environmental or the GHG reductions impact, maybe another one is kind of a health perspective, maybe another one is financial, and work with different student societies to kind of launch those promotional materials, get survey responses, and then use that as the foundation to say, okay, we've done this awareness campaign, this is the engagement we've received, this is the feedback we've received, opportunities for improvement, and then reapproach and say, you know, I think that there's an opportunity here. We would love your support, and let's, you know, see what we can do. And I know it's easier said than done as well. And again, it always goes back to resources and capacity.
I also suggest focusing on the evidence based on like the evidence that connects with the strategic plan that Kylie had mentioned before. It's very unlikely that any university today has strategic priorities that aren't at least somewhat related to reducing ecological impact or being better global citizens, or, you know, something like that. And I think if you focus on the evidence that does exist, that we need to reduce the animal products in our diets, and connecting it with those strategic priorities, or in our case too, like in childcare, mission, vision, and values, there's very few organizational statements that are consistent with intensive agriculture, animal agriculture. Like you're just not going to find anything where they connect. And so it's kind of bringing it back to that. I don't know if that helps. It's hard to have a resistant person, and then also have them backed up by, and we're at the University of Guelph, so of course we're familiar with, you know, strong animal agriculture faculty and funding and stuff like that. So I think it's focusing on the evidence.
And I don't know if everybody saw the article that came out from The Lancet a couple of days ago, basically saying that universities leadership need to do more, like they need to be leaders in this. And that's sort of a consistent message in the emails that I sent out. Everybody seems to be working very hard, but we don't hear from leadership, you know, to support this movement so that we minimize the negative comments coming out from some students and so on. You know, there isn't that piece of education, I think, that really needs to be there. So anyway, I will be writing my email next week. I will include that Lancet article that came out. And then I generally will be writing a email to the board of directors at the end of the year. But yeah, it's just amazing what you have done, and it's so inspirational. I think everybody on this call has felt that dynamism, and we just got to keep pushing forward. And I know, Vijay, when I spoke to you, you say you just keep trying to, you know, inch forward to increase plant-based every day. And I think that's the way to do it. You know, sometimes when you make a big switch, people will notice it, but slowly but surely you'll get there. So I think it's important to continue to do that. You know, not to sort of stop, but just to keep increasing. Okay, you've been amazing, both universities, just very inspirational, strong leadership and strong vision. And I've been really so happy and proud to have been working with you over the last 2 years. And I want to really thank you and let you know that all of us really appreciate the hard work. Yeah, Valerie, sorry.
Can I say one more thing? I don't know if this is of interest, but one of the other things that I didn't do my introduction because I knew I was in a hurry, but I'm also on the founding advisory of a plant-based nutrition certificate that we have at the University of Guelph now. And it's the first university level certificate of its kind in Canada. And one of the courses which I teach is implementing a plant-based menu in an institutional setting. So that might be of interest to some of your colleagues or yourselves. I just wanted to mention that that certificate does exist and has something specifically for plant-based menus in institutional settings.
And we've had great feedback on those courses, Valerie. Thank you.
Great. Oh,
Dr. Jenkins.
This has been a great meeting, so I've enjoyed it immensely. I just wondered whether I could perhaps feed everyone with a little more ammunition here at the University of Toronto. Trevor Young suggested in the Faculty of Medicine that we should do an environmental series of lectures on the Anthropocene. If I send them to you, would you like to send them to everyone? We've just finished our series this last week, and we've got a lot of things on nutrition. We've got a lot of things on environmental issues. Perhaps members here would be interested in, it's free. I can just send it to you and they can link into it. Would that be useful?
Absolutely.
Good, I'll do it.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Jenkins.
Super, well done, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Very, like I said, very inspirational. You have that good feeling, you know, there's hope. Okay, well, oh, sorry, Annette?
Do we have time for a question?
I guess we can try. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it out to the group. The college I'm work at, they're currently undergoing a review of the food services, and I had a lengthy discussion with the contractor they hired to do the research, and he said it's, you know, and he actually had meetings as well, I think, with David Spade and others. And he said those universities basically can do it only because they have a meal plan and a captive audience. And places like ours, which is, they call it fee for service or something like that, where basically it's not the post-secondary institution that takes all the risks and, you know, puts their money and educational purpose and stuff behind the change in meal plan, but they'll basically farm it out to like an Aramark or a Chartwell or whatever. And then they just do the same old, let's please the customer, or what they think will please the customer. So does anybody have any idea how to best go forward in that kind of situation? Well, you have to sort of, I guess, convince the consumers first, or I mean, we're sort of in a great position now where we can affect some change, but it doesn't look like there might be a lot, simply because of that model. Because is there any hope for the smaller institutions that just farm these food services out?
Well, I guess my first comment would be that, I don't know if Rihanna is still on, but they are also working, yeah, Rihanna is there. They are working with the food service companies, right? Quite a few of them. So Rihanna, could you comment on that, please?
Hi, yes. Sorry, I was just about to hop off, but I'm happy to stay on for a minute.
Thank you.
I missed the question. No, it's no problem. Do you mind just repeating the key part of the question?
Yeah, with smaller institutions that don't have a meal plan and that don't back their own food services, but put it out to tender to companies. I was told by the consultant that they are unlikely to go much more plant-based, maybe just a little bit, but not a lot, because yeah, it's basically the company that needs to make the money.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Excellent question. Thank you, Eleanor, for tapping me in. So we do absolutely work with food service management companies that do get contracted out for running these services. You know, just like a campus or any other operation, there's varied levels of, you know, interest or desire to go, you know, to a certain extent with their plant-based options, but they are willing. And I think I'd say that all of them that exist in Canada that we work with, you know, the big four or so, they're all working on this. They're all aware that it's an area of growing interest. They're all, to various extents, working to add more plant-based options to what they offer. So I'd say there is an opportunity there. And I always say to the client side, if there is a case where, you know, a campus, for example, or any other type of operation is looking to contract out their services, they can be very vocal about what they want. You know, they are in a position of power ultimately, like they're, you know, giving business to this company. They should be able to say, this is what we'd like to see more of. You know, we'd like to get
we're trying to make them say that. Yes.
Yeah, I think if there's desire on the campus's part, that should be communicated, because the company would want to know that and be able to respond to that. And I think it can be a bit of a conversation, a bit of a dialogue where they can work together to get to that point. We've seen it work on other campuses for sure.
Oh, good. But with that fee for service model.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
I think it's good to get this information out, because you perhaps didn't know this, you know, so you can push, you can be a little bit more pushy on that. And you can say that other universities or smaller colleges, let's say, are able to do that. You know, we shouldn't take no for an answer too quickly, I would say.
Well, yeah.
And
responding to what the consumer is asking for. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to also expand on what Brianna was saying. Ultimately, everything comes down to procurement and purchasing guidelines and policies. And if that's an avenue that in your university or college can have that as a focused project, is okay, let's review the current purchasing policy and strategy, and let's build it into what the requirements are, and putting the onus on the suppliers that if they want to work for the university or the college, then they have to meet the standards of the institution, because the institution itself have broader climate and sustainability goals. That's something that is a current ongoing project for UVic, as well as doing a comprehensive review of our purchasing strategy, because again, every university is different, but it can be very decentralized in the way that different departments have gone about their tendering process or the contract. So having it built in system-wide is really important. And then having also supplemental resources like guidelines. So when there is more choice, that you're able to send departments or other groups, you know, hey, if you're planning this event, or hey, if you know you're trying to get catering or food services, here are some guidelines and some criteria that we would recommend you look at. But going back to the institution kind of approach is having those expectations and those standards built in and making it a step requirement.
Put it in the notice to tender. Yeah, we're trying to ask them to do that. Thank you.
Hey, well, we're definitely beyond the time, but I think it was really worth it. And we've had several people ask for the presentation. So maybe over the next few days, if you wouldn't mind sending them to me, please. And I'll put them on a site where everybody could access them. But again, I just want to say how proud we are of the universities that we've been working with. It's been just a pleasure. I mean, I didn't get resistance. I got enthusiasm. People have moved forward, and it's just been a privilege, I think, to have worked with everybody here. Everybody has done so much, and you know, we can't really tell. We just kind of see the end result, but there's so much work and effort and enthusiasm that went into it. So thank you. And if you have any other questions, just send them along, and I will field them. And just to say the last announcement, I was going to bring up the slide, but on June 7th, we're having the Trade Association meeting. We'll have the chef Alicia, I can't remember her last name, who worked with LinkedIn San Francisco and brought them to 65% plant-based. And Amy Symington will be there. And we'll have other chefs across universities. We'll have the student group represented. And we'll have Rihanna as well as Ilana from Greener by Default. So yeah, if you haven't received it, let me know and I will send it to you. So thank you so much to our guest speakers immensely, and to our audience. You've been just terrific and very encouraging. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.